During the French Revolution, around 40,000 people were executed, including about 10,000 via the guillotine. This was the preferred method of execution because many people of the time saw this as a quick and ethical method of murdering someone. However, being that the Enlightenment was at its peak in 18th century France, it was a curiosity of the day to wonder if beheading was truly a painless process. So the question arose, does one remain conscious for a few brief moments after being beheaded? Obviously, neither the head nor body will necessarily remain still after decapitation. Everybody is aware that animals may wriggle, bite, or even run around for some time after being beheaded. The famous case of Mike the chicken surviving for 18 months headless is fairly well known. But aside from apocryphal tales and headless chickens, how can we know for sure what's happening in the head after decapitation? A study would obviously struggle to pass an ethics board, and outside of a few gruesome modern occurrences, we lack a subject population. With this video, I'll be sharing some incredible anecdotes of the past, told by some surprisingly credible people. It all started in 1789 when Dr. Guillotine called for a reformation of the method of execution to standardize the procedure. He boasted, "With my machine I'll have your head off in the blink of an eye and you will not suffer at all." In 1793, the murderer of Jean-Paul Marat, Charlotte Corday, was executed by decapitation. The assistant Francois le Gros lifted her head and slapped her on both cheeks. She became angry and flushed according to many onlookers. Gros was imprisoned for this outrage. In 1795, L'Humaniteur published a letter by the German anatomist Samuel Thomas Sömmering. He said the guillotine was a terrible type of death, given that the feeling, personality, and self remain alive in the severed head for a few moments after the execution. Sömmering gathered a number of testimonials. People grimacing after death, staring as the executioner stuck a finger into their spinal marrow, following people with their eyes, their lips murmuring and twitching. Debate began to rage amongst doctors and politicians, with letters and articles, essays and speeches, both denouncing and supporting the execution method. After the Revolution, stories and interest continued around the subject. Charles Dickens wrote in 1846 of an execution he witnessed where the severed head avoided looking at anything but the crucifix slightly to one side of the scaffold. In 1890, Dr. Dassy de Linière was given the fresh head of a child murderer. He promptly began transfusing the head with dog's blood. I'm not sure how you do this, but that's what my source says. But supposedly the man's lips trembled and his eyes briefly opened in shock and horror. Most convincing comes in 1905 when Dr. Gabriel Beaurieux tested the head of murderer Henri Languille and reported some disturbing findings. The eyelids and lips of the guillotined man worked in irregularly rhythmic contractions for about 5 or 6 seconds. It was then that I called in a strong, sharp voice, "Languille!" I saw the eyelids slowly lift up without any spasmodic contractions. I insist advisedly on this peculiarity, but with an even movement quite distinct and normal, such as happens in everyday life. Next, Languille's eyes very definitely fixed themselves on mine, and the pupils focused themselves. I was not then dealing with the sort of vague, dull look without any expression that can be observed any day in dying people to whom one speaks. It was at that point that I called out again, and once more without any spasm, slowly, the eyelids lifted and undeniably living eyes fixed themselves on mine, with perhaps even more penetration than the first time. There was a further closing of the eyelids, but now complete. Thanks for watching part 1. Part 2 will be about the science behind consciousness after beheading. Bye everybody.